On today's show, training camp is now underway for the Hawks, and day one is in the books. We get into all of what was said after that first practice for Atlanta, plus your mailbag questions and much more. It's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2067 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday here at the end of September and into the month of October. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5. If your first bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. Head to FanDuel.com right now to get started. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out. Subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple and Spotify. We are also on YouTube, so please like this video as you're watching it. Please leave a comment, a 5-star rating and review, and of course, tell your friends about the show. And we'll have a busy episode today, the first day of training camp in the books now for the Hawks, and later on in the pod, your mailbag questions. But first, a mini announcement to give you at the top of the podcast, more of a heads up, quite honestly. After Wednesday, when you're listening to this podcast, I will be heading out of the country for about a week and a half. Obviously, the kind of timing is not ideal for that. If you didn't know this already, I have a day job still. This does not pay all of the bills for me, unfortunately, and not an optional trip for me to go on. So this is not my choice on timing or location or any of that stuff. On the bright side, it could have been worse, honestly. I got to go to media day. As long as the travel gods cooperate, I'll be back in time for the final 2 exhibition games for the Hawks. They're back at home. The first 2 games this year in the preseason schedule are on the road. That all helps. It's not regular season games. I get all that. With that said, it's literally the first time since I launched the podcast more than 9 years ago that I'm going to be out of pocket when there are actually games happening. So granted, it's only 2 preseason games. So in the grand scheme of things, these are good ones to miss. I'll be trying to watch from abroad if technology allows. But with where I am going, without revealing too much, I have to plan on at least not being able to record from a technology, Wi-Fi, everything standpoint. And that means that I am actually going to be pre-recording the next several shows on the feed. So I'll tell you that now for 2 reasons. One of those is that you'll be aware that I will not have my usual game breakdowns after the first 2 exhibition games for the Hawks. If you listened to the show last year, you will know that in the audio feeds of this podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc., there are some extra episodes sometimes after games from Locked On Sports Atlanta, postcast crew. I do not work on those directly, and I'm not sure if they'll be happening for preseason, but those could pop up. You might see some new stuff from there. Again, it's only in the audio feeds. They have their own YouTube channel, but the network does put those in the Locked On Hawks feed on the audio side when they go down. The second thing, though, is that I am pre-recording everything that goes up. So I will ask for some grace on things as they get posted, meaning that hopefully nothing will be terribly out of date. I've done a lot of recording in the last couple of days and really over the last week and a half. And I set it up so that there should be plenty of content for you while I'm out of the country. To pull the curtain back a little bit, I don't usually advertise things ahead of time, but these have been recorded, so I know they actually were going to be banked and available. I will have the final 2 player capsule breakdowns with Glenn Willis, good friend of the podcast, BTL on 29, between now and when I arrive back in about a week and a half. So one of those is a 2-part deep dive on Jalen Johnson. The other one is a 2-part deep dive on Trae Young. That's 4 episodes in batches of 2 on Jalen and on Trae. Those are hopefully going to be still evergreen and good to go when I'm gone. Also, I'll have some over-under podcasts with Robbie Callan that I've already recorded. Might even be a crossover episode at some point, something else. But there will be podcast content. This is our 3rd show this week. There'll be more to come this week, and there'll be a full week of shows next week. So, at any rate, I am scheduled to return to the country on Monday, October 13th, and that happens to be the date of the preseason opener for the Hawks at home. God willing, travel gods, etc., I'll be able to get from the airport to the arena that day and be in business as usual from that point forward. So sorry for the long preamble. I don't love to do that at the top of the show, but instead of doing it later on, people might not have actually heard it. If you're following the podcast regularly, you will have seen this, have heard it, and it's really, again, the first time in basically a decade of this show where I've been gone anywhere near this long during the season. I might occasionally miss a game, like maybe one. Candidly, I absolutely hate it. I like to be on the pod, I like to be consistent and have the show all the time, be up to date, etc. But one more time, it's not something that I could possibly have avoided. So there you go. To the rest of the podcast now, I want to start the rest of the podcast, the basketball portion of this podcast, with a breakdown of the first day of training camp. So if you're unaware of this, I did a show on Monday about Media Day. That's kind of the unofficial start of the season. They'll also actually practice. It's a pretty full day of not just media stuff for them, but they're taking all their photos, all of the preseason, pregame videos that you see, those big time produced videos. They do all that stuff yesterday. And then the Hawks actually open camp on Tuesday. And they basically do 2-a-days this week. Then they have a game, by the way, on Monday on the road. So it's a short ramp-up period, but they practice today for the first time. And for the media standpoint, the media is allowed in at the end of the first practice. They do 2 a day. The evening sessions are off limits for the media. Even the morning sessions are not able to be watched. But anyway, guys talked after the opening practice. So that's kind of where there was some new stuff to get through. Full disclosure, I was not there today. Again, aforementioned day job, but Hawks PR shares the audio with me when I ask. Shouts to those guys. And I will try to include the questions as well and the audio that I'm going to play for you. But one of the interesting things that I was able to see pictures of from my good friends Lauren Williams and Caleb Johnson is that the Hawks have now put flags on the walls to represent countries from the roster and from the organization. This is a new feature. I've been in that gym many, many, many times. This is a new thing on the walls in that organization, kind of the gym that they use for the practice facility in Brookhaven. And by the way, last year they were at UGA for camp. This year it's at the practice facility where they normally are. The Hawks are now one of the most international teams in the league, quite frankly. They are represented just on the roster, only on the player side. They have guys from Canada, Mali, Nigeria, Australia, Serbia, Senegal, Czech Republic, Latvia, and France, plus the U.S. So that's just the player side. This is a very multicultural, multi-country kind of team, and that's actually it's kind of emphasizing that by decorating a little bit differently in the arena. Beyond that, Quinn Snyder had a question, actually, about how he kind of implements new players that he's coaching for the first time, and I wanted to play that answer for you right now. Again, this is Quinn on the handling of new guys he's coaching for the first time.
Given you've been doing this a number of years, what do you kind of see as your best way of implementing new players throughout a training camp and getting them kind of ingratiated?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, in the summertime, we're a roster, and the challenge is for that roster to become a team, and then for the team to become more and more connected, and trust each other even more, and communicate even more. And, oftentimes you need time, and sometimes adversity helps you in that. But it's not the Ryder Cup; it's the one time that guys come together. But you can see even to use that. How much enthusiasm and how much people enjoy being part of a team that's connected. And we had a lot of guys playing on their national teams. This is different. It's harder because you have 82 games. There's different incentives. But to the extent you can develop a group that is that connected, that really it shows itself on the court with the way you play.
So I mentioned on the show on Monday night after Media Day that Quinn didn't really talk on the record at all this summer. So I realized in saying that he hasn't really talked about Asa Newell at all, the first-round draft pick for the Hawks. So I want to play a short answer that he actually gave to Lauren Williams today, in which he harkened back to his extensive focus from yesterday on versatility as a concept. And here is Quinn talking about Asa and, of course, versatility.
What did you see maybe carry over into training camp that he already implemented from
I think he's got a really good feel for the game, especially for a young player. So, beginning to train and develop habits where you can become instinctive. He's already pretty far down that line for a young guy, being instinctive. But being able to apply that with other guys, and being connected is something that I think we'll continue to see him improve, which, that allows you to play with different people. That's some of the versatility that I was referencing the other day.
And again, I won't always play all this much video / audio with you after practices. It's kind of the first one and fresh stuff. And, we're not able to watch these guys for a little while. So I thought it was kind of, interesting to kind of dig into some of this stuff. On Asa, by the way, he spoke after practice today. Only a handful of guys did. It was Asa Newell, Trae Young, Porzingis, and Quinn. We'll get to Trae and Porzingis in a second. But this is Asa's first professional practice officially. Of course, he's been in mini camp, as you just heard there. But I wanted to play a back and forth with Asa that he had with Lauren Williams and Kevin Chenard, good friends of mine, to get a feel for what he's kind of saying about the differences between the NBA level and what it's like to kind of enter a season in college. Obviously, played summer league as well, but this is kind of the first really, ramped up NBA practice. And here's what Asa had to say about that transition from what he was like about a year ago at UGA.
Asa, what have you noticed as the difference between maybe training camp here with the Hawks versus maybe what you did down the street at UGA last year?
Yeah, I mean, it's just how much time we have on court. I mean, we only have a week until our first preseason game, and I was talking to the guys, like, it's nothing like college because you have the whole summer, you're doing boot camp, you're flipping tires, you're getting out there on the track, and here it's just you either got it or you don't.
Yeah.
So.
Did you get to do like team workouts over the past few weeks before this?
Yeah.
And what were those like?
Yeah, I've been here the whole summer. It's really just individual training, working on stuff that they need me to do, and it's really just a bunch of skill work and then playing 5-on-5.
What were the 5-on-5 games like?
It was a lot of fun. It's super competitive. I like playing basketball, so that's what we did out there.
What excites you the most about just getting into tramp and getting going?
Yeah, I mean, I just can't wait, to go out to Houston and play. But really, it's just like finding myself, like what role am I going to have, seeing how coach practice or how he coaches, because he's been to the side the past summer and everything. So finally hearing his voice, getting into the video room, watching film, and just hearing his voice.
All right, that's a glimpse from Quinn Snyder and Asa Newell. When we come back from a quick word from our partners, we'll be diving into what Trae Young had to say today, Porzingis, and then also your mailbag questions at the end of the podcast. First, though, we'll be back in just one moment. The NFL season is here. If it wasn't an offer that you absolutely do not want to miss right now, if you're a new customer at FanDuel, you bet just $5, you get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's right. Pick a bet right now. Put down $5. If it hits, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. FanDuel is great in so many different ways. And one reason is because it fits however you like to bet, honestly, on your own, whether it's player props or same parlays. They have straight bets, whether it comes to over-unders or money lines, point spreads, etc., plus future bets. Even live betting as the action unfolds, it's all there for you at FanDuel. It makes watching football or basketball, etc., even more exciting when you got a little bit something extra riding on the action. And they have every sport you can think of, honestly, from the NFL, of course, college football, the NBA, which talk about all the time on this podcast, baseball, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer. They have auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. Whether you're a casual fan or you just love to dive into all of the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better for you. FanDuel is quick, it's easy, they're fast to pay out when you win, and it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your game days. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app right now and get started today. Obviously, Trae Young got a lot of attention yesterday. I played the full context of a couple quotes that he had on Monday. He kind of talked pretty generally today, typical leader stuff. There wasn't a specific question about injury updates at Media Day, like to anybody that I heard. Obviously, the Jalen Johnson thing was the biggest topic, where honestly talked about that, as did Jalen, him being healthy. Porzingis talked about his general improvement and health-wise from the illness that he had at the end of last year. But I have been hearing that everyone was healthy and good for the Hawks, so I wasn't going to press that. And Trae basically confirmed that. I'm going to read the quote. His audio was a little bit sketchy that I got today. So the quote was the following from Trae, quote, "The vibes are really high. The best part is that we're all on the court. I don't look in the training room and see everybody out there in the training room right now." End quote. So that's good news. Obviously, knock on wood, as a Hawks fan, people got mad at me that I haven't posted that quote, but it is what it is. The Hawks have had some injury issues. That's not a secret over the last couple of years, but everyone is going and playing, and that's a positive to begin camp. It won't stay that way. Obviously, you're going to have injuries. That's kind of the name of the game. I always don't want to overcook how much injuries have hurt the Hawks compared to other teams, but they have had injury issues in the past, and everybody's out there right now, which is very helpful. Trae also was asked if this is the best roster that he's had as he actually got here, and he said, quote, "On paper, probably," which is, I think I agree, honestly. I know they made the conference finals with this when he was here in 2021. You could certainly argue that by the second half of that year, with the way that Bogey was playing, with the way Capella was playing, Gallo, etc., that was a good roster as well. This is the one I think entering the season was probably a better roster. I think Porzingis is upside if he's available. Guys like Dyson, Jalen, of course, I would lean to this year too. So that I was interested to have kind of Trae confirm that. And then also I mentioned Asa Newell earlier. He was very positive about Asa in general. He left out a question about Asa being left-handed. Of of course, is a play finisher, and also poked fun at him for getting a one-on-one stop on Trey in practice today. So all lighthearted, all good vibes around Trey and everybody else at practice today. And the last thing on practice front is Porzingis talking. He was pretty upbeat as well. Certainly had the feel of someone who's been here before. This is not new for Porzingis or really for anybody, but certainly a guy who's been around different places for a long time. I do want to play you one clip, though, that Porzingis talked about, a sequence about him talking through what it was like with Quinn for the first time, playing with him and also playing alongside Trae Young. So here's Porzingis on both the experience with Quinn and the experience with Trae in the first day of practice.
No, I think it's just good to start to get a feel for each other, starting to Coach Quinn was explaining, the offense and what he wants from us offensively, defensively. And honestly, for me, I love what I hear and how he was running, how he wants to run stuff and his ideology. For me, I was super happy and excited to play for him and to learn more about what we're going to do this season.
Speaking of getting a feel, Trey said it doesn't take him long to know where you like the ball and try to be able to find you. How do you feel like that chemistry just through a day is kind of coming along?
No, honestly, I could tell right away that he's looking for me, and he me and him, we had to develop this two-man game, and play off of each other, and I'll try to make his life easier. And he's so smart; he will be able to read me like this, what I want to do, where I want to catch the ball, and sometimes he finds people. Even today, again, he found people in situations they don't even expect the ball to get to them, and he finds them. So he's a special basketball player, and I'm excited to play with him.
One more thing on Chris Apps, he actually was seemingly shocked about how young Dyson Daniels was in particular. It's something I actually emphasize a lot on the pod. Dyson's only 22 years old, and as much as he's done in the league already and last year, et cetera, and he generally talks about the youth of the roster in a positive light, something that he was seemingly really excited about coming to Atlanta, given the talent that the Hawks have already kind of showcased, what the Hawks have on their roster. And they are a young team. I know that was emphasized a lot on Monday, but they are, one of the 5 youngest teams in the league. And, certainly there's a debate that I saw even today online about age versus experience level. And, it's the age part that you talk about the Hawks being so young, but there is undeniably growth potential for a team that is younger than older as far as skill development, as far as guys, getting better and better. So yes, it matters how long you've been in the league as well, but the Hawks are a very young basketball team. Dyson being 22 is an example of that. So that's kind of a little bit of a recap of what was shared today after one practice. Again, I won't be doing that all the time, all year long, but it's a big one. It's the first time out, and a lot of guys getting comfortable as we move forward. From here, I want to answer a couple of mailbag questions before we get out of here. And again, on the aforementioned, my final currently recorded episode before I head out. Question from Leonard, who says, is there a timeline on when the Hawks might decide between N'Faly Dante and Charles Bassey, or is there something that might tell us what they think of Caleb Houston along the way? Obviously, this is a sicko question, which I definitely love. So thank you to Leonard for that. If you are someone who wants to mailbag question answered, either on the podcast or just in general, you can find me on Twitter/X at BT Rowland. You can send it to the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland, and there's an email address for the show. It's lockedonhawks@gmail.com. Plus, I'll take questions from Patreon, which is patreon.com/BT Rowland. And questions, I won't always do a mailbag call. It's just whenever you want a question answered, I might add it to the list and get to it later on. And this is a good one from Leonard. The real deadline for a decision on either, the decision between Dante and Bassey or whether to keep Houston is probably October the 18th, which is the last day that a team can waive a player on a non-guaranteed deal and not get anything charged to them on the salary cap or the luxury tax for that year. So that's kind of a rough deadline, I would say. The Hawks might decide on their roster before that, of course, but that would be the only firm deadline financially. The Hawks' last preseason game is October 16th. To actually keep any of those guys all the way there without any penalty whatsoever. And look, this is actually something I've said before, but the reality is the Hawks could just keep everybody. The Hawks could just roll with exactly this roster into the season. They have 18 guys, they have 15 contracts on standard deals, plus they have the 3 two-ways. They have a full roster, but they don't have anybody extra on the team. So they can keep Dante and Bassey and Houston if they want to. I asked Auntie about this on Friday, and I talked about optionality, of course, which is the Hawks do have the end of the roster. For example, they could make a trade between now and the season starting. They could sign somebody else that gets cut somewhere else. That makes sense too. They could sign someone who's a free agent right now. And by the way, I know one of the dreams was the Hawks might get in there on Al Horford at the end or DeAnthony Melton or whatever. Those guys did end up signing Golden State as expected. So keep that in mind. But overall, they don't have to do anything. They can keep all these guys. I do think, and honestly kind of confirm this in a roundabout way on Friday, that Bassi and Dante are competing directly for a spot maybe, but they actually could keep them both. Like, wouldn't be surprised. They're very cheap. Houston is kind of more what he looks like than competing directly because he's kind of in his own realm. But he was a guy who was on an NBA contract last year, like a good shooter and a wing. So I think maybe you can kind of glean from what they look like in preseason, generally speaking, with those three guys. But it's also, I would argue, more about what they see in practice behind closed doors, how guys are fitting in, etc. So it can be very hard to gauge unless one of them like just kind of blows up in a good way in preseason. Basically, I think the preseason games get overvalued because it's what we can actually see versus what teams are seeing, which is all the practice time, behind the scenes, drill stuff, even summer stuff, whatever. That is a bigger deal than what we might think from the outside. But it's certainly a day-by-day process. I think between now and mid-October, we might start to hear some stuff about who's winning those battles or whatever. But as much as the Hawks do have optionality and versatility, they could just do nothing and stick with this roster, and that wouldn't stun me whatsoever. All right, more to come. At least one more question coming about Dyson Daniels' extension and his talks there after a word from our partners. Peloton shaping the future of fitness with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance on endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that can help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. The Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching, and that's a huge win in my view. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter for you. The swivel screen is also a game changer, absolutely. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat, and they personalize class recommendations that you actually keep engaged for yourself, and you get workouts tailored to your vibe and your energy level each and every week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. That is onepeloton.com. All right, question from Tony, who says, Zach Lowe and his guest talked about Dyson's extension on his podcast. They seem to agree that it was likely to happen. What do you think about that? And also, the guest talked about Atlanta maybe wanting to do it now in case Dyson got better. So good question here from Tony. For one thing, we were kind of due for a Dyson check-in. I also want to give the context of the podcast. I actually heard this one before I actually get into the question. So always fun. They do a good job on Zach's podcast. And he was joined by Fred Katz of The Athletic. Fred's been on this show long ago. And he kind of ran down the major candidates for rookie scale extensions, of which Dyson is one. And the premise was basically that they were trying to figure out, and they were openly kind of guessing more than reporting about whether a deal would get done for all the players between now and the deadline in October. So the first part of this is that both Zach and Fred came around to a lean toward the Hawks and Dyson doing a deal between now and then. Also, by the way, we are about 3 weeks away from the deadline. It's October 20th, so like 20 days from now when we listen to this podcast on Wednesday. It's the day before the season starts, which is always the date. The season begins for a few teams on the 21st, and the Hawks actually open on the 22nd. But roughly 3 weeks away from the deadline for the Hawks to sign Dyson to a deal that would begin next season. This year is already locked in, so no worries there. The second part of this conversation from the question is that Fred did make the case that the Hawks might want to secure something with Dyson in case of another leap from him. And that's something I talked about before, honestly, because I do believe Dyson is the combination, like he has a combination of age, pedigree, talent level, potential to where he actually could make another real jump. And that's the kind of player that you do want to maybe lean towards getting done. I answered a question earlier this summer about Dyson being a most improved player candidate again. I think it's unlikely, but it's certainly like not impossible because Dyson's that kind of offensively has a jump in him, I think, if things go well. So zooming out a little bit, I've discussed Dyson's extension a few times already this summer, but I think it's a very interesting case overall. Like there's basically, I'm just going to list some like pretty intriguing factors in Dyson's extension. Like for one, is that I would say defense in general does not get paid in the same way that offense does. That's probably fair to say. Another one on the other side is that Dyson's very young and he was a lottery pick. Usually lottery picks get paid more if you go put slot by slot because of pedigree. Dyson being a younger guy helps him too. There are not a ton of comparisons for him, but some of them, like Jalen Suggs, Emmanuel Quickly, et cetera, are pretty favorable to Dyson. The Hawks have very clean books in the future, which does matter. The cap's going up considerably right now as his deal is getting done. One more is that like his teammate Jalen Johnson got 5 for 150. That's kind of interesting as a comparison point. But at the same time, the Hawks also have uncertainty with Trey and Porzingis when it comes to money. The Hawks have a history of luxury tax avoidance. So like there's always like competing factors back and forth with Dyson and his team. So the list goes on. Then you have the factors that I would say always should be part of the chat about rookie scale extensions. For me, I always say this, but it's true. You are paying, if you're the team, you are paying a player a year ahead of time when you don't have to. And that means as the organization, you're taking on the risk, basically. Rather than the player having the risk, if you don't sign one, you're taking on the risk. And for that, you should be getting a good deal. If you don't believe you're getting a relative bargain as the team a year in advance, you probably shouldn't do the extension. That's general, but I do believe that to be true. Because again, it's a year ahead of time. It doesn't even start till next season. The Hawks have done very well recently with, Jalen's deal was awesome. I thought a Kong was a really good deal. That looks even better now as well. But if you go before that a little bit, DeAndre Hunter was a pretty big contractual mistake. Like, he's a good player, but that was a deal that was immediately kind of around the league seen as underwater, and the Hawks had to kind of claw their way out of that deal versus it's kind of not what you want a year in advance when you're trying to give an extension out. So it's different front office now, of course. They've also did a good job passing on Sadiq Bey when he kind of wanted a higher number. That was a good decision, et cetera, et cetera. So that brings you back to Dyson, right? Dyson's representatives would be more than justified for me to come in and ask for Jalen Suggs money, which is 5 for 150 or so. To be clear, I'm not saying that he should get that or that he will get that or whatever, but that'd be a fair starting place for him to come in and ask for. If you're the Hawks, you probably want to see him get something more in like the mid-20s per year. Like, for instance, Jabari Smith Jr. is actually right now the only player in this class who is not a max player who is signed. He got 5 for 122. I think Dyson's better than him, to be clear. But Jabari was a top 3 pick. He's also similarly young to Dyson, and he's the closest thing that we have in this class to go on. So, like, if the Hawks said, all right, we'll start at this deal, that would be a reasonable place for them to start too. And then you go somewhere between Jabari Smith and Jalen Suggs / Jalen Johnson, which is 5 for 150, would be my projection. If the deal gets done, it'll be somewhere in that $25 to $30 million range. My guess. I think I'll probably go down to the wire. Most of these do. I would say the vast majority of these do. If you don't get it done fast, it will go to the wire. But I do tend to side with Zach Lowe and Fred Katz on this podcast and their guess that it actually does get done. I also won't be shocked if it doesn't, because look, there's a reality in the real world, though, that if you're being offered $100 million plus, it's a different calculus. And Zach actually got into this on the podcast. I made this point last year with Jalen Johnson, where I think from reporting around that last year that his camp believed he was worth more than he got. And I think that in the end, it's life-changing money, and you don't want to put that at risk when you're the 20th pick in the draft and you've made some money in your career, but $150 million, $150 million, like, the money is so big now that it is a factor beyond like what your percentage of the cap actually is. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Dyson can be in a similar spot. I don't know if that's going to happen. Also, the last thing on what Fred Katz said about Dyson having more upside, that is definitely a thing. Like, he may not hit it, but going back to Jalen Johnson, part of the appeal with the Hawks side of that deal was that if he made a leap, the Hawks wanted to be guarded against that. And I think they believed he was going to. And look, he got hurt last year, but I think if Jalen had hit free agency this summer, he would have gotten considerably more than he actually got. He might have been a max player, and he ended up getting $30 million instead of $40 million. That's a big difference for the Hawks. So I don't think Dyson's going to average what Jalen averaged as a scorer in his 4th season, but it's plausible that he has a step forward offensively. And if that happens and they don't extend him, the Hawks are going to wish they had. So that's there's always a little bit of risk. On the other side, I have to just note this. We saw this year that restricted free agency can be very, very, very helpful for the team. And that means that, like, if the Hawks want to wield that, they can probably. Now, Dyson might just be so good it doesn't matter, but that they have that hammer. That's the team hammer. On the player side, they have the maybe we get a lot better and make more money later situation. Again, the risk factor switches from team to player if you do the extension now. So it's a tricky one for sure. Like, Dyson's really good. I have always been a Dyson guy. Before he blew up with the Hawks in the draft, I've always been very high on Dyson Daniels. By the way, the Hawks love Dyson Daniels, unsurprisingly. I think it gets done, if I had to guess. And it might take some what I would call it maybe like emotional intelligence on all sides to make sure they don't blow this up over like a small difference, because in the end, like I wouldn't worry about that too much. If Dyson's team wants 29 and the Hawks are at 27, like I think it gets done. If it's that close, it'll get done by the end, I think, but we'll see. But anyway, that can happen anytime. Like I don't think it will. I think if it does get done, it'll be like the last day or two before the deadline. But remember this: if the Hawks get Dyson for anything around what Jalen got or less, I think it makes sense for them. If Dyson gets anything more than like $22-23 million per year, I think it'd be defensible for him too. So there's a middle ground there. I think it probably will get done. But yeah, there's risk on all sides. There's always risk on all sides of these deals. Sometimes, every once in a while, you have a max guy. It's like, obviously, it's going to happen. Like when Trey signed his max deal, it was like, yep, clearly going to be a max, easy one. But most of these have some push-pull, whether it's a high-end player or more of a mid-level guy. Dyson's kind of in the middle of those two things, but I think he will be a Hawk for a long time, and we'll see if that gets done now or if it gets done a year from now. All right, everybody, that's all I have on today's podcast. Again, my apologies for the PSA at the top of the show, but hopefully got some basketball stuff from this show as well. One more time, please stay tuned for pre-scheduled podcasts over the next week and a half. Plenty to get to, so please lock it up on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, etc. Like the show on YouTube, comment, ratings, reviews, all that stuff appreciated. Follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. Also follow my non-podcast coverage of the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, enjoy your Tuesday into Wednesday and the rest of this week, and we'll see you all next time.